1. Hello, comic book fans. This is Pete from Comic Books Transformed, and I just turned off Marvel Snap on my phone. Me and my good friend Brian over there are here to talk about the show Willow, Brian's very favorite show on Disney Plus.
You know what? Okay. It's not a completely true statement, but it's not a false statement either. I really like this show. There's definitely some flaws in this show. Generally speaking, I agree with everything everyone says, but I still think underneath it, I enjoyed it. I got more enjoyment out of the show than basically everything we've watched on Disney Plus, with maybe the exception of Andor and maybe The Mandalorian.
What about WandaVision?
I would put I had more enjoyment out of this than that's hard. It's hard to say that. I don't think WandaVision stick the landing. I think WandaVision had a really good setup and premise, and I really enjoyed the different eras every time. But the end of it was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, it's a magic battle, and we kind of get that here in this episode too with Willow. It's just like shooting bolts of magic at each other, and the ending of that didn't live up to the whole premise of the show, with the exception of, I guess, it was kind of grim in the sense that, Wanda lost everything, really.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Like, in general, we've probably, or I personally have probably said more critical things of the Disney Plus shows that we've covered than I've said positive things. And there's been exceptions, like you said, Andor. With Willow, I think in general there's a bad rap about it mainly because the main characters talk like they live in a modern world, and I think a lot of people have a hard time accepting that in a fantasy setting.
The main criticisms are, yes, the modern dialogue. I've heard some complaints about costuming. I've heard it's too woke, and the music, which has won me over. I'm okay with the modern music. I don't care. I like it. You know what? Like, I had the same people had the same criticisms of A Knight's Tale back in the day. You know what? I like that movie.
Okay. So there's definitely a lot to unpack. If you guys are new, because I'm streaming this on Facebook Live for the first time now. If you guys are new, we have a YouTube channel and we also have a podcast. If you are on that YouTube channel, please give us a like. Make sure you subscribe. And on the podcast, hey, you can subscribe to us on there too. But Brian and I cover all the adaptations of your favorite comic book movies and TV shows. We do a lot of Disney Plus stuff. And so for Willow, we're 3 episodes behind. What do you think we should do, Brian? Like, maybe just go through each of the last 3 episodes one at a time? Or
let's go through each episode one by one. I think that makes sense. I don't think we have to spend too much time on each one. Maybe the last one we can cover a little bit more since it's a little more recent and fresh.
Okay, yeah. And over the course of this, we can kind of address what Brian just said about like what he likes about it, and then also the criticisms that a lot of people have. When you were messaging with me, you said that this is very much like Final Fantasy.
Yes.
So what do you mean by that?
I got that. I mean, it's a journey. It's a party of people going traveling, and there's some weird, goofy stuff, and there's some serious stuff going on there. I really that conclusion hit me on the 7th episode, so the second to last one. With they're on, the scenes at night when they're on the Sand Sea, no, the Shattered Sea. Sorry.
Yeah.
It visually struck me as Makalania Lake from Final Fantasy X, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. They're quirky characters with all different pasts. There's all kinds of weird love triangles and stuff. Final Fantasy X in particular was a group of people protecting this kind of like chosen sorceress who essentially had to sacrifice her life to save the world, which sounds kind of similar to what's going on in Willow here,
Yeah.
And there's a love triangle there, and there's people that are dead and they don't know it, and people that die. I really think that there's a lot to compare there, particularly with that game, but overall too. It's like the general tone of a lot of those games. There's a lot of goofy stuff and fun stuff, and there's a lot of real serious stuff in those things. But generally, they're all a journey. You're going around from place to place. You're on a quest. I know that's not exclusive to Final Fantasy or video games or anything like that, but I really felt that, and I think that was part of the reason why I said, like, you know what, I'm just gonna go on the record and say I like this show, and I've been defending it and everywhere. I'm probably the only 40-year-old, 40-something white male to do that.
Yeah, well, if you go on like Gizmodo, they really defend the show, and I've actually looked up some reviews just so I can get some kind of show recaps, and I have seen positive reviews. Even in the positive reviews, though, they do talk about some of the negative sides or some of the things that they feel could be better, right?
Yeah.
But I understand if you're comparing it to Final Fantasy. I know you're a huge Final Fantasy fan, so that would make you like it more. With episode 6, this kind of was the episode, though, that made me. I almost was kind of embarrassed to admit that I was like watching it and reviewing it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So going in from 5, to me, 5 was the worst episode.
Okay.
It was just like Zion and the Matrix, but in the forest. They turned these kind of like villainous characters, like villainous tribe, into these kind of, I don't know, like rogues and hippies in the forest or something.
Yeah.
I did not like episode 5. That's the low point of the show to me. Then you go straight into the beginning of 6, where the troll. I mean, the ending of 5 was cool. Like the trolls show up, and it's like, oh shit, the trolls are here. They're gonna do something. They're gonna eat them or some shit. They're this like, what's a good word to describe how the trolls spoke?
Okay. So I believe me, I was trying to think of it because when I was writing, I was like, well, what does it mean? Like, I don't want to say like effeminate is not the right word. It's actually it's kind of insulting, right? But it's sort of like effeminate's not the right.
Like Frasier to me,
Like Frasier. Okay, I thought like this sort of like meek, like kind of middle management, like HR kind of person. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the guy in Office Space who's like, can you come in on right? And it's just such a juxtaposition from they're these scary troll creatures that when you see the original Willow movie, they're pretty menacing, I think, in that movie.
Well, I mean, like, I think that ultimately they do look kind of goofy because they're people in these kind of lackluster costumes, and they're just kind of like galloping around, but I mean, to a child, that is kind of terrifying. But like, you look at it now, and it's not as terrifying as it was. But this was a turn, and I didn't like this turn. I didn't like it at all.
It kind of reminded me of like that Land of the Lost, but like the Land of the Lost remake movie with Will Ferrell, right?
Totally see that, yeah. So I agree that was also bad. And then we got to talk about Christian Slater too. He's very hit or miss for me, I guess. Sometimes he's really good in things, and sometimes he's just Christian Slater in things. And I feel like he was Christian Slater in Willow. And I had a hard time believing it. I don't think his part was bad. I think he gave a lot of decent backstory here and development towards the Mad Mardigan.
Yeah.
But like seeing him is like, oh, it's Christian Slater.
Yeah.
As opposed to like the next episode where we see the old innkeeper guy. It's like, oh, that's Julian Glover, but like he feels like he fits there, sort of, But
Wait, who's Julian Glover?
Julian Glover, he was in the Last Crusade. He's the bad guy in Last Crusade, and he's an Imperial general in Empire Strikes Back.
Oh,
and,
that guy?
And Grand Maester Pycelle in Game of Thrones.
Oh, holy shit! I didn't even realize that was him.
Yeah. But like that, like character actor, good, fits in there. But this is like Christian Slater stunt casting. This is Christian Slater, like it didn't work for me in that sense. But I think what the character added was helpful and good, but took me out of it because it was Christian Slater.
Do you think at any point they were legitimately considering that he was going to actually be Mad Mardigan and they were just going to have him play him and not Val Kilmer? No.
I think that's a great question. If they would have considered recasting, I know the voice. So we hear Mad Mardigan's voice in this episode at some point. That's actually an amalgamation of his voice and his son's voice.
Okay.
Which I thought was kind of cool. It was like
Yeah.
a kind of nice little way to follow up with it, because obviously he can't be in the show because of his health.
Yeah.
So I think that's a way of getting around it. If I don't know if it would be different if he had already passed or something like that, or a long time had gone by. But the fact that he's alive, but he just can't, and I think what they're doing is fine with that.
Yeah, I thought that maybe they actually did consider replacing Val Kilmer with Christian Slater because like they're sort of contemporaries, you know.
Yeah,
You know, there are roles that Val Kilmer could have had that I think Christian Slater could have done. But
yeah,
going back to your point they made earlier, I agree that like Christian Slater has this kind of presence, which is kind of funny because often he kind of feels like he's aping Jack Nicholson, but then it's like he has his own personality,
yeah.
and he did just seem like Christian Slater in this Willow world. And I think that that is really the main problem that people have with this show. I know the woke thing is just it's a fucking talking piece that everyone just always uses, always immediately. Oh, it's Disney woke.
Yeah, I mentioned that I know people complain it's woke. I don't
Right.
really agree with that.
No.
You know, so they flipped the script a little bit. They have a lesbian romance. They have a man in distress instead. I don't care. Like that. That's not woke. Is a terrible term we shouldn't use anymore.
Yeah,
Because of how it's used, how it's weaponized. Essentially, you know.
Yeah,
It shouldn't. It essentially is meaningless to me now because of how it's used in different regards. So you just can't use the word.
yeah, I agree. I agree. It's not a complaint that we use on this show, but it's a complaint I've seen about this
Yes.
about Willow. And so I think that though the main complaint besides that sort of knee-jerk thing is that the characters just don't feel like they're from this world. They don't feel like they're from a medieval world. And the Christian Slater stuff, he really doesn't feel like he's from that world. At some point, he's like singing in that episode. He's like, "Oh, my real passion is singing," and the lyrics are so like juvenile and stupid. It's like kind of too much. It's just like that one leader of the trolls, where it's just like so over the top and so ridiculous. If it was
the troll guy was worse.
The troll guy was worse. The troll guy was. I mean, I'm trying to think of like sort of adventures that are like almost more comedy than adventure. Like, I mean, obvious answers I think of off the top of my head are like Guardians of the Galaxy, where you could almost say that's almost just a comedy with a little bit of adventure, or like Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad, James Gunn's version, right? Yep. Where it's like, oh, it's very much a comedy, or Peacemaker. I keep referencing James Gunn stuff. But it's like the James Gunn stuff, whether it's Guardians or his DC stuff, there is always that sort of feeling of menace or violence. There's something more to it. And all of the Disney stuff in general is just very like generic seeming and bland, to where it's like it has to fit this shape, and it doesn't. It's yes. But it's not only safer, it's just like, and I think I've said this a whole bunch of times, and I definitely don't want to get to the point on this channel where I'm just repeating myself every fucking episode. But it is like this idea of like, if you're trying to appease everybody or make it something that everyone can access, then it's just not interesting, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so, you're trying to serve everybody and you're serving no one.
Right. And so you really feel it when Christian Slater's just running around and making these goofy jokes. I like what stands out in this show. Like, okay, why don't we flip it on its head? What about this show seems kind of novel and interesting to you, or is not generic?
What I like about the show is I actually like the character development that has been going on and the personal arcs that a lot of the characters seem to have. Okay. You know, we're obviously seeing Kit kind of grow into a position where she's like her father. Yeah. And I think that kind of culminates in the last episode. You know, Willow comes to terms with the fact that he's not a great sorcerer, and you know he's kind of hacked his way through life, sort of. What else is there? I've enjoyed the as much as it is kind of CW. I've enjoyed the love triangle-y stuff.
Okay.
You know, I'm on board with Kit and Jade. I'm on board with Graydon having feelings for Laura, and I think potentially vice versa as well. I'm not as sure about that. I think that the stakes they put into the characters' positioning and how they feel about each other works for me. And you know, I do think there is a sense. There actually is a sense of danger that you could lose some of these characters at some point, and I think that actually does happen, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think they've done a decent job with mythology here, like building up, like you know, the original movie is just an evil sorceress, and that's you don't know what's behind that, but now we know that there was someone kind of leading her on. I mean, she was leading on the Bone Reavers. Someone was leading on Bad Morda, and then someone was leading on the person leading Bad Morda. Ultimately, they have added to the mythology of the movie. They've expanded it, and I love things like that. I like when something I like is expanded upon, and not just a little slice of what it was.
Agreed. Yeah, that mythology is interesting to say the least. Like they introduce in this episode the not orcs, the trolls are mining something, and it essentially is like evil. It's like pure evil, right?
Yeah, liquid evil, which we ultimately do find out it's essentially Slurm from Futurama.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And it's for this creature that's called the worm. The very last episode of the show is called The Children of the Worm. Like the worm is like the ultimate evil. It's like the Satan or whatever the thing is that is like Sauron's commander. That's it, you know. Melkor, I think, is that one. What did you get out of the worm? Is the idea like, because I remember they talk about the worm. It's like something that lives off of magic, right? It like feeds off of magic.
Yeah. Again, this is like another like super video gamey thing. It's an ultimate darkness, evil god. Mm-hmm. You know, and that is cliche. It sure is, but I don't know. Maybe you don't see that. You don't. I feel like the cliches in video games you don't see as much in TV. Mm-hmm. In fact, so like usually, like there's something like there's a dark god or there's a leader or a king that's evil, but like this is like in video games a lot of times you do fight evil gods.
Yeah, you know? Yeah.
So that's kind of what I got out of it.
Right, and so like Willow, it's interesting, right? Because Willow, the movie, was created by George Lucas, right? Like he came up with the initial idea, and then Ron Howard directed it, and you know I think there's other writers involved too. But when Willow, the character, is explaining magic to Elora Danan, he talks about how like magic is essentially like the lifeblood of the world, and in his description, it kind of sounds a little bit like the Force too. And it's like, well, of course, like George Lucas, right? But what was intriguing to me about the worm was the idea that the creature itself was like feeding off of magic, that essentially it would kill the world. And so the stuff that they're mining is like, it's like blood, or like it's the stuff that it's giving off, right?
Yeah, they said it's evil and it's power. So I guess it could be blood. I mean, I'm hoping it's not literally
blood. Yeah.
Excrement.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. So, you know, in the end of this episode, this first episode, they go into this vault that is from a Nelwyn. That's the race of, you know, Willow's people, right? And he's got a weird fucking name. His name's like Titty Jiggles or something. I don't know what it is. It's something stupid, right? And they solve some kind of riddle, and they're like, you know, it's kind of very Lord of the Rings. And then they go in there, and you hear Mad Mardigan's voice. He went through there in the past and apparently went on to face some greater evil. So he probably faced the worm at some point, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's something like that, or and it's just a creative way to kind of acknowledge him, but not have him be in the show because they can't.
Yeah.
And I know that, you know, I guess I would have liked it better if he was in the show. Yeah. But I understand that that's something they have to do, and I'm not going to throw that against them because they can't do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So
I think that's the best they could do with what they have.
Right.
In terms of the story of Mad Mardigan.
Right. And so once we get to this point, the heroes all get together again. They escape from these trolls. They escape from this mine, but then Kit, she falls into this evil, this water. And there's this really, actually, this is one sequence I did like, was that, Yeah. Where she's like upside down, or she's like in the water drowning, and her brother's reaching through a fountain, and they're both kind of going to touch each other. It's very much like that movie, The Fountain, with Hugh Jackman, right? And so he is in this I can't even fucking say it. Immemorial
City.
Thank you. And we get introduced to this other character who goes by the name of Lily, and she's from Kashmir. But of course, like right away, you assume that that's the crone.
Yeah. Yes, because there's no need for it to be there. But before we get too far into that, I mentioned before about the character development and the drama between the characters. I really like the scene here where Kit is essentially blaming Allura for her father leaving and everything that's gone wrong in her life. She's saying, like, he chose you over me. And, that, and then that kind of helps Allura to kind of, like, awaken something in her. And that, even though she feels the need to save her because she feels guilty over it. And she kind of awakens her latent power to help break that, whatever that evil ice stuff was to save Kit ultimately. But I thought that was a great scene between the two of them. And, it shows how far they've come from the beginning because, Kit was very dismissive and fairly unlikable in episode 2, 3, 4, but she's grown. She's shown growth. She does. And same thing with Allura. She was kind of like an aloof, like, side character sort of thing, and she's kind of growing into the role of chosen one. So it's hero's journey kind of stuff there. Again, very much like Final Fantasy.
Look, I'd hate to admit this, man, but we talked about that Kit would become more appealing by the end of the show, and that her character would grow, and we would like her more. I hate to admit it, but that did actually happen. Like, I did feel more of a connection to her by the end of the show. Do I feel like it was worth it, and this was like a worthwhile character? No, not necessarily. I'm not like loving her and like, oh, I want to see more of her. I can't wait. But I'm like, oh yeah, I will see more of her. It essentially went from
I would see more of her. Like, if there's more of it, I would see it, but I don't necessarily like, please give this to me. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Whereas when it started out, I'm like, oh, please, I don't want that character, right? I still do, though, throughout the entire show, not really care about Jade, and I feel like Jade is sort of a bland, lame character.
But funnily enough, Jade's the one that sounds most like she belongs in a medieval fantasy world.
Oh, with her accent and stuff? Yeah. I guess you're right. Yeah, that's true.
She has the least use of modern dialogue in the entire cast.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, that's kind of ironic in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just feel like you could give her, like, if she's there or not, it doesn't really matter, right? Boorman, I've always kind of liked, even though I do feel like some of his jokes fall flat. Not all of them.
There were 2 jokes that went overboard to me. Wait, was it 2?
Well, the one about them kissing.
And then in his last 3 episodes, like, in the last one, it's like, oh, we're all gonna die. Should we make out? And like, that was weird because of the age difference.
So there's that, right? But okay, we're jumping ahead, but I do want to address that specific line because it's like that's the whole thing about it being a Disney show, right? If in a different thing, if it was like a more adult thing, it'd be like, hey, we should have sex. The world's gonna end. Let's have a threesome, right? Right, and that'd be funny because he's saying that, right? He come off as a creep. He's like, "Should we kiss?" It's like me in high school.
But it's like he's like 30 saying this to like 20-year-olds. It's like weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think that if it was like in the context where he could be like, let's fuck or something. I don't know.
No, you're right. It would have been funnier. It would have worked better as a joke if it would have went a step further with it. Yeah, absolutely. But it's still wrong, but it's funnier that way for some reason.
Right. So okay, but we're jumping ahead. So okay, let's get up to the next episode, which was where we did Prisoners of Skellin. The next one is Beyond the Shattered Sea. So, dude, what is the Shattered Sea as itself? Is it like an ocean that had cracks in it and most of the water has gone away? What the hell is it?
I think it's like quicksand mud sort of thing.
Okay.
And it's just like, you go on it, you could fall in quicksand. I don't know. I thought it was cool.
it looked cool, but I was like, well, what the fuck is it? Is it just like this endless sea of quicksand mud then?
Yeah, it's an endless sea of mud. Yeah, it goes on for a really long time, and then it ends in a waterfall, and you have to jump up.
Okay, okay. Well, now that I know that the weird old man that farts is the actor that was General Veers in Empire Strikes Back.
Yes,
Okay,
that's right,
okay.
General Veers. Yes.
Yeah. So okay, that kind of blows my mind. I didn't
And
make
Walter
that connection.
Donovan from Last Crusade.
Yes, yes, yes. The guy that falls apart when he picks the wrong Grail.
Yes.
He's actually in an episode of Doctor Who that's really good, but like the classic old Doctor Who, from the 80s or whatever. Anyway, so there's this creature that they bring up in this episode, and it's like a mud skimmer, right?
Mud kipper or mud skimmer, something like that, yeah.
Mud mander. I just looked it up.
Mud mander, oh, okay.
Okay, so Lucasfilm stuff, they do have great creature design, all the Star Wars stuff, and then in the original Willow, there's cool creature design, puppetry and things like that. This creature, I think that they were trying to go for that same kind of feel of like, oh, look at this cool fantasy creature, but I just felt like no connection to it whatsoever, and it felt weird having the scenes with Graydon kind of bonding with it. It just felt so like, this is literally just here because you're checking a box.
No, I'm not going to say it was stellar or needed or required. I didn't mind it. It did sort of give Graydon something else to do, so he wasn't just wrapped up in a love story or whatever,
Yeah.
I didn't mind it at all. I mean, they needed a way. I don't know. I thought the mud scene was cool and a little different. And then, especially like I said before, those night scenes, like I thought looked fantastic. The way they showed the backgrounds with the stars and the colors in the sky and all that. That looked great. Very cinematic. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, they had almost like a training montage sequence where they're like battling to prepare, and it's Kit and Jade fighting each other. I actually really liked that, and that was sort of, they showed that during that montage sequence of like them kind of traveling and training. Yeah. I actually did like that, and they picked some kind of cool song to play over that sounded like Evanescence or something. I was digging that.
I don't remember what song it was.
Yeah, a lot of the cover songs, you can recognize, just like, oh, it's like Master of Puppets or something, but it's with a female singer,
Yeah.
And then the very last song that they play for the whole show, it's kind of weird because it's not a cover. It's I Want My MTV, right?
No, that's a cover.
No, it's the original version.
Like Dire Straits.
Yeah, Dire Straits, right? With Sting, though, right?
No, that's not Sting.
He doesn't sing "I Want My MTV." No,
that's not Sting.
All right, whatever. Okay, jumping ahead.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did like that sequence. They get there. And, they decide that they're going to go, Kit and Laura are going to go jump off the edge of the earth, essentially, and go into the immemorial city.
They're essentially facing that, the challenge of like, oh, this is a dead end. What do? We take a leap of faith. Again, cliche, but I think it worked.
Okay. Yeah, but I just want to bring up one other point, though. You mentioned that, Graydon, we wanted him to have something to do besides sort of getting wrapped up in that love triangle. There was this whole part with Graydon and Allura where there was tension because she saw into his past, right?
Yes.
I felt like the stuff in his past where he was possessed and he like killed his brother, that's really interesting stuff. And I feel like the highlight of the show, the part that you liked so much, when you had that battle at the Slaughtered Lamb where a couple of characters died, I feel like that and the backstory of him being possessed could belong together in the same show. But for the most part, they were this sort of darker moments that don't really fit the majority of the show that we got.
Yes. I think ultimately the show is a more lighthearted adventure.
Yeah.
I think that those dark moments work with that, but maybe they need to just tone down the lightheartedness a little bit.
Right.
They need to focus a little bit more. Ultimately, I'm enjoying the show because I can see the bones of something good underneath.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I absolutely admit of the flaws that I agree with what most people are saying about it, but I can look past them. I guess I don't know. I'd rather enjoy something than not. Like I'm getting something out of it, but I can absolutely realize that it could be better.
Okay. Good. Well, with that being said, why don't you just kind of take us through the last episode and give us your thoughts on it? Because I feel like so much of our discussion today is, Brian, doesn't this suck? Don't you think this sucks? Then you're like, it doesn't really suck. That's really what I'm saying. Don't you hate this? You're like, no, I actually kind of like this.
Like it. So the final episode opens with the seventh episode closes with Kit and Laura ending up at the Immemorial City, and Eric is there, and he's drinking the Kool-Aid. He's got a new haircut, and he's all in on the worm and all that.
Yeah.
So there's some tension there. They meet the crone, and then there's that general temptation that you face when you face a great evil. It's like, oh, you come join us. We'll give you what you want.
Right.
And then you have to kind of come to your senses and realize, no, this isn't going to work out like you're saying it is. You're just trying to tempt me.
Yeah.
And eventually all the other characters that were doubting their quest, and they follow, they join, and ultimately I thought we got some pretty cool looking, like, high energy battles at the end. I mean, Alora's fighting a crone. The CG was a little questionable, I suppose. The bitch line that she says was really out there and shouldn't have happened. That was bad. That was very bad. That was that modern dialogue that did not need to be there.
Yeah.
Maybe I could argue that, like, shooting magic bolts is a little cliche and not as interesting. I wish it was more than just shooting energy beams.
Right.
But I thought the sword fight was really cool with Kit and Jade. Was it Kit and Jade versus Eric?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was a pretty well choreographed fight. Like, I thought it looked pretty cool. I really love too that this whole time Borman's been obsessed with this MacGuffin,
the Cuirass,
the Cuirass, whatever, and then he finally realizes, like, no, this isn't mine. This is why it's not working, because you're the person, you're Laura Dannon's protector. Like, you're the person that this is going to work for, and it does. And she gets this cool suit of armor, and it's all magic-y and cool, and she looks just like Mad Mardigan,
Yes.
Afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, I wrote that in the notes, but that actress that plays Kit looks so much like Val Kilmer at the end.
Yeah, especially when the armor comes on, it's like, holy shit, that's Mad Mardigan. That's Mad Mardigan at the end of the movie. When he's at Tierslien and he finds the armor in there, like that was that.
Yeah. All right. So you said your positive stuff. Now I'm going to say my negative stuff, and then you can rebound it. Ready?
Yeah.
So my fear with Disney, and I feel like this has already been happening for like a decade at least, right, is that you take these things that are different properties, but then you start to homogenize them all so that they're all kind of interchangeable. And I feel like everything, Marvel's the biggest out of all of them. Star Wars used to be the biggest, but Marvel's the biggest now, right? And so I feel like everything is kind of shifting to become Marvel. So you have a battle between the Crone, who is a new creature that's made for this show, and Laura Dannon, who is the child that's like prophesized in the original Willow movie. And their battle is like Wanda fighting Doctor Strange, or fighting people at Kamar-Taj, right? In Multiverse of Madness.
Wanda versus Agatha Harkness and WandaVision.
Exactly, right? And then you have this awesome suit of armor, the Cuirass or whatever, that Kit puts on, but that's like Iron Man, right? It like just comes all together like Iron Man suit.
Magic Iron Man, okay, yeah.
Right, so it's like, they have those video games and stuff where I remember like Disney had this game where you could get the little figures of people and they could just put them in, and then they all like can be in the same video game world together. I think it's Infinity, right. And I feel like that's kind of what Disney Plus is. It's like, oh, well, this is Willow, but it kind of feels a little bit like modern Star Wars too, and then it also kind of feels like Marvel, and everything feels like Marvel. So I know it just sounds like complaining. One of the best parts of Multiverse of Madness is when Doctor Strange fights another Doctor Strange, and they get kind of creative and they start using like music to fight each other. I love magical battles where it's creative on how they fight. And even in Harry Potter, which is all about magic, so much of it is just people shooting beams at each other. Whereas there's this one battle between Voldemort and Dumbledore in the second to last movie, or third to last movie, where like they get creative and they like make shit. Like that's, you know, when you see a magical battle, that's the way it should be done. Like, you know
I want to see creativity and not just energy blasts, essentially. Yeah.
Right. I did like the last episode. It pretty much is just like, okay, it's a final battle kind of thing. They've reached their destination. Pretty much everything you sort of expect to happen happened. Did you think at any point that Eric might either die or he might kind of run away with the crone and then he would be like the bad guy in the next season?
Yes. I mean, that's kind of what they set up here, but they kind of flipped the script there. And, you know, we have Eric joining the crew and Graydon's kind of left. Well, I mean, he looked like he died, but it seems that he's with the next level up evil.
Did you, in that moment when he got blasted, were you like, oh, he's dead? Or did you think he might still be alive and we'll see him in like a post-credit scene?
50-50 on it. I thought because the scene where he does die, he's kind of like, he comes up and he's trying to save Allura and he's saying, you know, this is what, you know, and the crone is basically like, this is what you need to do. This, like, I felt his pain and like I felt the power of magic, and even that can't really hurt me, you know. And she's telling Allura that, you know, you're not doing it right yet, and to join her, and then you will be able to do it right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I really did think that they were gonna pull, you know, Graydon and Allura get together kind of thing there, and I still think that's in the cards if we get multiple seasons.
Yes.
As an ultimate ending.
Yes.
Because it definitely seems like during this journey, Allura has changed from the person she started out being, and she's not really interested in what she thought she wanted previously with a life with Eric.
Yeah. At one point with Graydon, you know, all of a sudden he's kind of like this established sorcerer that can do blasts as well. And I was sitting there thinking, like, oh, wait a minute, there's too many magic users. It's like they have a D&D party. You have like a paladin and you have a magic user. You know, you got to like balance it out more. And like, oh, somebody's going to die or something. And
I was actually most expecting Willow to die.
I did think Willow was going to die too. I did think that.
If I had to bet money, I would have bet on that. But yes, they had to get rid of somebody at some point or change something about it with the stakes in this final battle here.
Yeah, I did think multiple times that Willow might die. And I'm like, they just kind of keep the show going, but just like have his name as like a tribute.
Yeah, I think that works. He had a presence, he established it, and you know, it's like passing a torch kind of thing, you know.
Yeah. Like there was that show Star Trek Picard, and I always kept thinking, you know, Patrick Stewart's so old that if he died, would they just keep the show going and still call it Picard, you know, but like just in his memory? That's what I was thinking might happen with Willow. But okay, there's one thing I wrote notes about. I want to talk about Ant-Man too, and we still have a little bit of time. Are you cool talking about Ant-Man too?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, two things then. We're going to talk about the very last scene of the show, but before that, I want to talk about this one part with Allura. I wrote notes about this, but essentially she's talking to the crone, and the crone is about to give her everything that she wants. And what the temptation is essentially Eric, the crone is talking through Eric, and the crone is basically saying, hey, why don't we just make it that you were never the chosen one, or you're not the chosen one, and you're just essentially a cook, and then you could be married to Eric, and you could have this happiness for the rest of your life. Which that works with her character because that is her motivation for going on this adventure in the first place, was to get with Eric. But at one point, Allura says, like, that's not the way it goes, or that's not the way the world works. Now, that's what you expect a hero to say. But in like truly good adventure stories, there is something that you see that shows why a hero has that conviction, right? And so like the best examples and the most obvious examples I can think of is like, you know, Peter Parker when he lets that crook run away and that crook kills Uncle Ben, or like Frodo when he gets visions of the Shire getting burned, or even like one of our shows that we've covered, like The Boys, like Huey's girlfriend gets killed by A-Train, and that just kind of like shows the hypocrisy of superheroes and stuff like that, right? All of these kind of defining things, these moments, show the reason why a character believes what they believe, right? And I don't feel like Allura really had a moment like that. She really just kind of had people telling her, "You're the good guy. You're going to save the day." But there was nothing that was like, "This is what you have to do." Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
No, but didn't she see a vision, Willow's vision of the future, or didn't Willow tell her about it? That she dies, saving, fighting, the worm.
I mean, he might have. Honestly, I might have like forgotten. I know. I'm pretty sure
she was getting visions as well. I have to go back and check that, but she was seeing things.
Okay.
I think at the very least, the crone was trying to contact her, because at some point in the 7th episode, she uses some evil spell against Willow or something like that, and Willow's like, "How did you learn that?" And she's like, "I'm seeing things."
Wait, yeah, you're totally right, because one of the crone's henchmen touches her at one point, and she has a vision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're good. Okay, I get it. So then, like, her thing there is like Frodo, where she's seeing a vision of what's to come, and it's like, I can't give in to your evil because it's going to do this to everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that works. You solved it. Okay. So, all right. So let's get on to the very end then. Okay. So it's not even a post-credit scene, right? It's essentially like the show kind of ends, and it doesn't even go to credits. It just goes to like an epilogue. Yeah,
epilogue, and then there is a small thing after the credits too. I'm not sure if you saw that or not.
Like after the credits?
Yeah, it's essentially, you know how the intro is them opening a book and they're showing a chapter title and all that.
Oh yeah, they close the book and they put it on the shelf.
Put it on the shelf. You see volume 1, 2, 3.
Right. Okay, so like 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I did see that, but the end of it, I really, really loved, because you have this big giant army and it plays that fucking Dire Straits song. Really good use of music and imagery together. And then the fucking dragon shoots out fire.
Yeah. So you have, and I think you mentioned before, one of the most interesting things was Graydon being possessed, and and now he kind of suddenly has this magical ability, all along sort of thing. I think that's what's going to be interesting about season 2, is that he is head over heels in love with the Laura Dannon. Whatever was ahead of the crone, maybe even as the worm or something like that, is manifesting itself as what he wants, and it's going to seduce him to the dark side, and then you're going to have them fight. I find that interesting.
Yeah. Look, I'll watch more of the show. The low point was the fucking trolls in the caverns. The end was better. If we did a ranking, I would rank this show pretty low on my Disney Plus, but I don't know. It has a lot of company. Yeah, no,
I get it. Like, it's not. I'm not saying this is amazing. This is like, everyone needs to go watch this, but I found it fun. I found it interesting. I kept wanting to watch more every week. Like, I would actually be excited to put this on Wednesdays. I haven't. I mean, I felt that with Andor, I would say, but like, I was like, I woke up, I'm like, oh, I should go watch this. Like,
I agree.
I can't say that about a lot of things we did. This thing, I feel like I was trying to watch them to get through them in a sense, so we can review it. But like, I would have watched this even if we weren't talking about it, I think.
Okay. Well put. I think that, like, I could say that for a few of the Disney Plus shows. There are a few that, like, I just didn't care. For Willow, believe it or not, as much as I complain about it, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of want to see what happens. Miss Marvel, I'm like, it's kind of a challenge. Moon Knight, I was like, oh god. What made me want to watch those shows ultimately was what are they going to show about the rest of the Marvel universe? That was kind of all that it was.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of the Marvel universe, one thing that's not showing in our thumbnail or in the title of this video, but we're just giving to you guys as a bonus, is we're going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the trailer that just dropped. Brian, do you know what number MCU film this is?
I'm going to take a stab that this is 32.
31.
So close.
Very close. Do you know how many Marvel films we'll have covered if we cover this one?
6.
7. Right, because we covered Black Widow, right?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. So basically all the like sort of post-pandemic Marvel movies we've covered. Yeah. So, all right. Here we go. 31st film in the MCU, 7th movie that we're going to cover. It's the beginning of Phase 5. It was written by Jeff Loveness. Okay. He is a writer for Jimmy Kimmel Live and Rick and Morty. And that was some controversial news today about Rick and Morty, right?
Yes, I did see that. Domestic abuse charges against Justin Roiland. I really read headlines. I didn't really read into it yet.
Yeah. But I wonder how that's going to affect the Rick and Morty show. But it is interesting that like so many of these Marvel properties, whether they're the shows or the movies, are written by Rick and Morty people.
Yes. Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of that. And although off the top of my head, all I can think of is right now is this and Jessica Gao with She-Hulk. But there's definitely more than that going around.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So this guy though, Jeff Loveness, besides writing Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, he's also writing Avengers: Kang Dynasty, which that makes a lot of sense, right? Because this is all about Kang.
Kang movie, yep.
Right. So thoughts right off the bat. Why don't you hit me? Go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still interested in seeing it. It feels weird to have Ant-Man, particularly Scott Lang Ant-Man, who's kind of falls into the role of Ant-Man in a way. You know, like Hank Pym is like a genius and he creates pin particles and all this. So it seems weird that like a con artist thief stumbles into something and he's fighting this kind of like very what's the word? Very like epic scale battle, sort of. You know, it seems like way above his pay grade. You know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Even though like he's going into the quantum realm / microverse, whatever, and like that makes sense to me. But it's just like he's a guy who stole things and he's fighting Kang in a subatomic world. It just seems like a mismatch, I guess.
Totally agree. You know, so much of this stuff is based on what we know is being made, what movies are being made, and like behind the scenes stuff. We start to like speculate where this is going. We have an idea what the movie's actually going to be. For me, the vibe that I keep getting from this is, do you remember, the fuck was it called? Like Countdown to Infinite Crisis. Do you remember that from DC?
Yeah.
Do you remember how Max Lord kills Blue Beetle?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what this kind of makes me think about. For anyone that doesn't know, I know, Brian, that you know this, but like if anyone doesn't know, there was this crossover called Infinite Crisis, and it was this big DC event, and it had these creatures called Omax, which were like the Sentinels, basically, for DC. And at one point, this guy, Blue Beetle, who's kind of this goofy hero, uncovers this mystery that this guy, Max Lord, is controlling Omac. When he discovers it, Max Lord just shoots him in the head and murders Blue Beetle. The original intention was that it was actually going to be Nightwing that was going to be killed. But the point that I'm making is that, because Dan DiDio, who's the DC editor-in-chief, always wanted to kill off Nightwing, right? So anyway, the reason why I bring that up is because that's what this reminds me of like a goofy hero kind of. What's the matter?
I'm just laughing because Nightwing eventually does get shot in the head.
Oh yeah, and then he becomes Rick Grayson.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that's maybe just they were trying to make it so that he's no longer Dick Grayson.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of Dick. Yeah, can't lose Dick.
Hey, aren't we all? You know. But so that's what this movie reminds me of. Like you have this sort of goofy character, which you were talking about, like this character he's a robber and stuff, and he's not the scientist, and he kind of stumbles onto this epic thing. And I feel like the way the trailer presents itself, it's going to have this like dark ending for him.
Very possible.
Yeah. I watched this really great review where someone went into deep detail about this trailer, and they were saying that third movies for MCU characters usually have the characters losing something or like getting rid of a big part of who they are. Like in Ragnarok, Asgard is destroyed. In Iron Man 3, Tony throws out his arc reactor, right? and in Civil War, like Cap gets rid of his shield, right?
He gets rid of his shield and his costume. Yeah.
Yeah. So that guy was implying that, like, you know, Ant-Man could lose something serious, like not his daughter, obviously, because she's going to go become a young Avenger, but like, you know, maybe Scott Lang, not Scott Lang, he is Scott Lang. Hank Pym will die or something, you know.
Maybe, yeah.
So I want to talk about a couple of things, but I want to talk about the stuff that excites me the most. First off, so do you know who MODOK is in the movie?
I mean, I saw MODOK in the trailer. I don't know who's playing him. I don't know how he. I mean, I guess he's some kind of being from the quantum realm now, and not what he was in the comics.
Do you care if I spoil it for you or no?
Yeah, well, let's do it. Why not?
Okay, so I've seen some stills of MODOK, and it looks like Corey Stoll. So like yellow jacket.
Interesting. Okay.
So like the idea is that maybe he was like shrunken down so far, and he goes into the quantum realm, but he's like disproportionate, like MODOK is with the big head, because of the way he was shrunken down.
Okay. Interesting.
And, you know, maybe Kang sort of saves him or fixes him.
Okay.
So that's interesting. They do that sometimes in movies where they kind of combine two comic book characters, because, like, you know, MODOK is George Tarleton in the comics, and then in this he'd be Yellow Jacket Darren Cross, you know? Yeah. One other thing that was interesting too was that they're going to name Cassie Lang Stinger as opposed to Stature.
Ah, I didn't know that. That stinks.
Sorry, and that's the idea of like kind of keeping it in that motif of like Ant-Man, Wasp, right? Stinger, right? Okay.
Yeah, because I guess Lawrence Fishburne was Goliath, and Stature kind of more lines up with Giant Man and Goliath rather than Ant-Man and Wasp. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, I got a little bit more to hit you with. Okay. So one other thing is Cassie was actually working on that device that she uses in the trailer. She was working on it while Scott was missing. So, which is weird because it's like, how did she know he was in the quantum realm? Which the guy that made the video speculated maybe like Lawrence Fishburne was helping her with the device. She gets outside help to make this device. So he was speculating, is it Ghost that helps her? Is it Lawrence Fishburne's character, who's Goliath? Is it Kang himself? So,
yeah, it definitely seems like she was working on it. She seems somewhat have some kind of knowledge about it, but maybe he's not as experienced because it looks like she does something wrong, and Michelle Pfeiffer's all scared. Oh, well, Janet's all scared, and they all get sucked into the quantum realm. Yeah, I think the most believable thing there would be probably Goliath, Lawrence Fishburne. If not, maybe Kang trying to because he needs Ant-Man to do something.
Right.
So maybe that works. But if he was already in there and Kang was in there, you know, when everything happened, I don't know how that makes sense exactly. I know that Scott was only in there for a few minutes and then 5 years passed or whatever. But that's a little weird to me if it was Kang trying to help Cassie get him back when he was already there.
Yeah.
So
I want to talk about just that. I want to put a pin in that though for a second. Because I got to bring up my last point that I think is really exciting to me. In the trailer, in the second trailer in particular, you see a lot of images of like Ant-Man sort of like becoming like kind of stringy and then becoming another Ant-Man. Like there's like copies of him sort of like he's unspooling. And the guy that made this video said that kind of imagery is very similar to when Wanda kills Reed Richards in Multiverse of Madness. Like she makes them all stringy, right? And then when Thanos uses the Reality Stone to make Drax and Mantis like, right? So Wanda's powers are like activated or like created because of the Reality Stone. So it's all reality stuff, you know? And one rumor, I know I'm spoiling a lot of shit for you, and I'm sorry for people that are watching if you want to see spoilers, but like they go to like the nexus of the quantum realm in this movie, and that's where all that weird stringy shit happens. And so it's like the nexus of reality. And I just think that's like kind of a really cool concept. And if like they are that smart to kind of tie all this stuff together, I like that kind of detail.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you got? I feel like I've been talking a lot from what I've read and heard.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could have rewatched the episode again for I'm sorry, the episode, the trailer again right before we recorded to refresh my memory. But I mean, I'm excited about the movie. That's kind of it. Like, I don't know what we're gonna get. You know, maybe I know a lot of people have been kind of down on MCU stuff more recently. And I could see that. Maybe it's taken a slight step down in quality overall. But hopefully we get back on track.
Cool. Yeah, I'd like to keep these within an hour so I could just easily put them up onto YouTube. But one last thing I wanted to talk to you about was, like, what is Kang's actual motivation? What does he need Ant-Man to do? And my assumption is that he needs him to, like, break into something and steal something. And the thing that he would steal would free Kang from the quantum realm. It feels like Kang is stuck there and he needs to get out and go.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah.
Right. I think the implication is that Kang has like a giant ship or something like that down there, and that like maybe it needs something for its engine, and maybe he needs Scott to go get that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, clearly we know he has a job for him. He wants to do it. And he's kind of threatening him to do it. So a heist is involved, and that's up Scott Lang's alley there. So, yeah. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to it. What is it? A month away?
Oh shit! I didn't write down the date. I guess I don't know.
February. So I mean.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh shit! There actually was one last thing, and we still have like 2 minutes. One other thing that's interesting in this trailer is that he talks about how he can give Scott time. And if you think about it, I saw a comment on this video where they were like, "Yeah, Scott loses 5 years with his daughter, but besides that, he also loses years with his daughter because he's in prison." So a lot of his life he hasn't had with Cassie. And by the time of this movie, Cassie also has trouble with the law too.
Yes.
So I think like, go ahead.
Kind of mirrors what we just talked about before this.
With what?
In the sense of, going back to the way things were beforehand and not going down this path sort of thing, got a reset button,
Yes, yeah, right. Kang's that evil, just like the crone, right. Saying like, yeah, exactly. Oh, good. Look, you tied it all together, man. Good job. Yeah, all right. Well, so that's a good stopping point. But yeah, Brian and I will definitely cover Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania when it comes out. If this is your first time watching our show, whether it's on Facebook Live, on YouTube, or on or listening to us as a podcast, make sure you subscribe. We'd love to hear what you guys thought of Willow. If you were fans of it, if you were not. I want to give a shout out to my friend Gage Greenwood. He is the one that said he was going to start using Facebook Live, and I was like, I'm going to steal that idea, like Scott Lang. And so, yeah, thanks. And wait, shit, what are we going to cover next week?
Next week we're going to talk about The Last of Us.
Yeah. Okay.
Not traditionally a comic book originating property, but it's got Mandalorian.
Nice, and it's got that girl from Game of Thrones, that little girl.
Yeah. God, she was a Mormon. Was it Lyanna Mormon? No, Lyanna. I don't remember. Everybody loved her.
Yes.
One of the few things everyone agreed upon on the last season of Game of Thrones. Everybody loved her. I agree.
Yes, and I think this show is going to make us cry, but who knows? I've never played the game, but yeah.
Oh, play the game.
Nice.
I mean, they're using a little bit too much hyperbole in the promotional materials. Like, it's the greatest video game story ever told, and it's really good. Yeah. But it's like elevating it like a little bit too much, I think. But okay. I'm still excited to see it. I think it is a good story. It's not just about zombies. It's about people, honestly. And I know that's like, oh, that's The Walking Dead, and yeah, it sort of is, but I don't know. Give it a shot. We are
okay. At least, hopefully, it'll be as good for Brian as Willow was. Yes.